Thanks for joining us on a road trip through rabbinic narrative. No agenda, just clarity. There's a really interesting medrash that I saw in Eicha that I've been thinking about today and wanted to share. In Perek Beis, Pasuk Tes. So as part of the description of the destruction, Pasuk says, Tavu ba'aretz she'areha. So literally translated, her gates have sunk into the ground. If you were to ask me, I would just assume that Yirmiyahu in this case is using some poetic license and giving a portrayal, some imagery related to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. But if you look at Rashi, he quotes some Chazal that don't seem to agree with me. Rashi on the spot says, Tavu ba'aretz she'areha, so Medrash Agada, Lefi shilchaku kavod la'aron, shenamar sushar mashichem, lefikach lo shalta behem birya v'tavu ba'aretz. So according to the Medrash, because the gates themselves gave kavod to the Aron, no one would be able to have any influence over them. And then he quotes another opinion in the Gemara Sota Maaseh de Dovid Hayu, lefikach lo shalta behem oivim, that the gates were fashioned by Dovid HaMelech, and therefore the enemies couldn't have any control over them. It seems like either way you slice it, Rashi's quoting Divrei Chazal that seem to be taking the pasuk pretty literally, that the gates actually sunk into the ground in a way that they weren't destroyed, that somehow they were preserved because they didn't deserve to be destroyed by anybody, not a bear guy, not the Oivim. And I'd like just to understand what to make of this. What is this focus on the gates? Because I think if we can understand how Chazal are viewing the gates, maybe we'll be in a better position to understand why they insist that they weren't actually destroyed. It's also interesting to note that both reasons seem to be related to Dovid HaMelech in some way. And so perhaps in order for us to understand what Chazal are saying, maybe we need to understand how Dovid HaMelech understood these gates. We have to go back to Perek Chaf Daled in Tehillim and see exactly what's going on over there. The point that interested me the most is the fact that there's a calling out to the gates. It's like you're talking to the gates and asking them to open up. And to me, that's just an interesting portrayal, because gates are part of a structure. In what sense do they have agency that you would actually be calling out to them? And when you look at the Perek itself, so the Perek takes a really interesting turn, because it starts off by saying, Mi ale behar Hashem, o mi yakum bekom kacho, who may ascend the mountain of Hashem, who may stand in the place of his sanctity. And it goes on to describe certain character traits that a person needs to have in order to ascend the Har Hashem and approach the Mekom Kacho. And then we call it to the gates and we say, lift up. And I would expect that we should say, lift up, so that now this person can enter. But that's not what happens. What does it say? It says, Shu Tzi'u Sharim Ashichem V'Yinasu B'Schelam V'Yavo Melech HaKavod. So it's not that this person gets to enter as the gates are lifted up, but now it's God is coming through the gates. The Melech HaKavod is coming through the gates. And that just struck me as really interesting. Maybe Dovid HaMelech in Tehillim is viewing these gates as something more than just architecture, but something larger, like a point of encounter between a person and Hashem. Now, it's true that Chazal interpret these gates, the Sha'arim, as the gates of the Beis Hamikdash, but I don't think they're contradicting the plain shot of the Perek in Tehillim. I think they're just adding another layer to it, that the gates to the Beis Hamikdash represented that point of encounter between man and Hashem. And maybe that's why Chazal are stepping in here and jumping onto this portrayal of the gates sinking into the ground. I think what they're saying is that really that point of encounter between man and Hashem, that's something that really can't be destroyed. That gate is not subject to the hand of the enemy. And so, in a certain way, even though the gates of the Mikdash were destroyed, what the gates represent to us couldn't be destroyed, and instead sunk into the ground. And so to me, this is a powerful medrash. With the loss of the Beis Hamikdash, we have lost a lot, but we haven't lost the ability to encounter Hashem. It might be harder to do. It's harder for us to find, and we may even have to dig a little deeper, but it's still there.